Hello, my name is Caleb Williams. I'm a student at Tarleton State University. This is my senior research project titled Personality Trait of Agreeableness and Liberal Political Affiliation. So first I'm going to talk briefly about the Big Five personality test and what it is and what it measures. So the history of the Big Five personality test is that the first person to pioneer what would become the Big Five personality test is Gordon Allport. So in the late 1930s, what he did was he searched through dictionaries looking for words that would describe human beings. And at first he came up with about 18,000 words, which he later simplified to 4,500. That's about where he left off, and then around 30 years later, W.T. Norman reanalyzed Gordon Allport's findings and was able to set the stage for what we now call the Big Five personality test, or the five-factor model. The Big Five personality test sometimes is called OCEAN as an acronym, and each of those five letters stands for a different personality trait. O is openness to experience, which could be summed up as being more open to new ideas versus more set in your ideas, or content with tradition versus challenging traditional ideas. The C stands for conscientiousness, so someone that's more orderly, cautious, disciplined versus someone that's more impulsive, disorderly, and undisciplined. The E stands for extroversion, someone that's more likely to engage in social activities versus someone that's less likely to engage in social activities. The A stands for agreeableness, which would be a high amount of care for others, but also a higher amount of concern for being liked and accepted by others. And the N stands for neuroticism, which is measuring if you have more negative emotions versus positive emotions. Many studies have suggested that the Big Five personality tests are universal and they're not just American or a Western European phenomenon. There's been tests done in Canada, Finland, Poland, China, and Japan that have all suggested that the Big Five personality test is a reliable descriptor of human personality. And a lot of this data that I'm citing comes from The Science of Psychology by Laura King, which is my textbook for my senior capstone class. So, I've just laid out what the Big Five personality test is, and I'm gonna talk about my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that the trait of agreeableness will be higher in those who identify as liberal in their political views. Participants were given a shortened version of the Big Five personality test, 120 questions worth, and then asked what political party they most identify with out of the following four: Democrat, Republican, Green Party, or Libertarian. Researchers using the Big Five personality test have found a correlation between the trait of conscientiousness and conservative political beliefs, as well as the trait of openness to experience and to liberal political beliefs. My study did not find a significant difference between liberals and conservatives on the trait of agreeableness. So, while previous studies have found that the trait of conscientiousness is correlated with conservative political beliefs and the trait of openness to experience with liberal political beliefs, I was interested in the idea of whether there was any correlation between agreeableness and political affiliation. So, as you can see, this is my presentation. As I've laid out my abstract, here's a visual representation of the Big Five personality test. So let me talk about my method and how I got the results that I did. I created a Facebook group to recruit participants. I invited roughly 30 Facebook friends. In the group, I stated that I needed 30 participants to take a personality test and then answer a question about political affiliation. I did not state the hypothesis. I requested that participants email me screenshots or a Word document of their results. I instructed participants to read the consent form first before taking the test. Some individuals got other people I did not personally know to participate, so that I got the 30 that I needed. Here below I show some screenshots from my Facebook group. Here's when I created the Facebook group, on March 10th. Here's me uploading the consent form for people to sign, or not to sign, but to read before taking part in the study. So here we have the average scores between conservatives and liberals. So there was only a 3-point difference, and it's from 1 to 100. So not only is that not that big of a difference when you just look at the raw numbers, but what I did was a one-tailed t-test through Excel, and it did not reach the value that it would need to in order to show that it was statistically significant difference between liberals and conservatives. So let me explain what I had to do since I gave people 4 options and not just 2. So the results were that 12 chose Democrat, 1 chose Green Party, 10 chose Republican, and 7 chose Libertarian. Democrat and Green Party were recoded as liberal, which should be pretty straightforward. In the common parlance, Democrat and Green Party are considered liberal political ideologies. Republican and Libertarian were recoded as conservative. So this is something I had to wrestle with a bit because depending on who you talk to, libertarians could be considered something distinct from liberal and conservative. It can't be really lumped into one or the other. I took a poll of a Facebook group of libertarians in Texas, and overwhelmingly people when they had to make a binary decision of saying that libertarianism was more conservative or more liberal, overwhelmingly they said conservative over liberal. So because of that, I decided that it was safe to recode libertarians as conservative. And I will say that I think that is a limitation of my study. That had I were I to redo the study, I would have just given people a binary choice of, do you consider yourself more conservative or more liberal, or do you consider yourself more Republican or more Democrat? So that's my study. Down here I have my references. In doing the research, when I was looking in psychology databases through Tarleton, I noticed that when I were to type in Big Five, it would yield a lot of results, like somewhere in the tens, somewhere around 10,000, I believe. So there's a lot of research surrounding the Big Five personality test. Once I started to scale it down and look at Big Five and correlations between the Big Five and ideologies or political affiliation or political ideologies, it started to drastically reduce the amount of content that I could use. And I noticed that this particular hypothesis and field of study has been only going on for what looks like the past 10, 15 years. And so it's a fairly new hypothesis, and it's a fairly new area of research to look at the correlation between political affiliation and different traits within the Big Five personality test. So that concludes my presentation of the personality trait of agreeableness and liberal political affiliation. I hope it's been interesting and that you have learned something.